Hello there and welcome back, my friends. In this video we are setting up a brand new 5-foot aquarium. Very exciting. Now this is an X-Display aquarium from the place that I work. It has seen a bit of action, it has a bit of scratches on it, but it was going to go in the trash and I thought that is a tragedy. So I brought it home and now I'm going to use it in my shed as a 5-foot macroalgae sort of display, because all the rest of my macroalgae, as you can see, is growing in these 4-foots, and well, let's just put it this way, they're not designed as display tanks, they're just designed for growing macroalgae. So I thought, let's do a nice display in my shed, let's do something that I can look at and enjoy. In this video we're going to be setting up the tank, setting up the hardscape and adding the water, getting all the filtration and lighting going. The macroalgae are going to come in the next video because obviously it will need to cycle for a little bit before I add any of the livestock. So I have got an idea as what I'm going to be doing with the hardscape. So if you've watched my most recent update on the small Evo, that's kind of the idea behind that, and I'm going to replicate that in a larger way in this tank. So we're going for a rocky, pebbly beach type aquascape, and it's something that I think works really well. Well, it certainly has worked really well in the Evo, so I want to scale it up a bit and experiment a little bit more with that kind of biotope. We're not going for the sort of deep sea reef kind of look, we're going for the shore kind of look. So that's something that I think will look quite cool. So what I've got here in terms of rock, I've got Carib Sea base rock. I've used this before. I use it because it's obviously a little bit more sustainable than using pure live rock. It's also a lot cheaper, but the downside to it is the fact that it doesn't come with any biological activity. It's completely dry and completely dead, but I've got stuff I can add into my tank to kind of get it going bacterially. I'm going to be using coral sand, but on top of that I'm going to be using another substrate, something that might actually surprise you. And I've got some shells, and then outside I've got a big pile of sort of round pebbly beach-like stones. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually put the rocks in and get that area set up. I have obviously had a play, that's why there's rubble in there, so I kind of know what I'm doing. Okay, that took a little bit of a while to remember how to put it back together, but that is the rock in now. So in this tank I've put all the rock in one corner, because the rest of the tank is going to be a pebbly beach style design. And to do that, I've obviously got the coral sand, but I've also got another type of gravel that I'm going to put over it just to replicate smaller pebbles. And then over that, I'm going to be adding some larger shore-washed stones and some shells. These rocks aren't actually glued together or held together with any milliput, but that's one of the things that I really like about the Carib Sea base rock. And by no means is this video sponsored by Carib Sea in any way, but I just really like this rock because it does meld together really well. It's very abrasive and has a lot of rough edges, and it kind of just knits together, holds together just by a lot of friction, and I've got no need to glue this stuff together, it's not going anywhere. And I've also put this in before I've put the gravel in, because I don't want the rocks to really move around and sink into the sand, so I'm going to pour the sand around the base of the rocks, and that'll kind of set them in place without them moving around too much. So it is reasonably important to actually wash out your coral sand or coral gravel because it's incredibly dusty. Now you'll never get all of the dust out, but you'll get a good majority of it, and then your filtration system should pick up the rest. Now I've just used tap water to do that out of the hose. The reason being I'm not too worried about my tap water, it's a good quality tap water, and also this is a macroalgae aquarium, so no real corals are going to be going in here, so we're not too worried about water quality to begin with. There's a little bit of the water left in there, but I'm not too bothered, as I've said, about that at all. And this is only half the amount of sand I'm putting in here. We'll put the rest in there in a minute. Well, it's not really sand, it's a gravel. And it's one that I think I've used in another build. And it looks really cool, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. as well. Putting up the layers now, and this is the gravel I'm going to put over the coral sand, and it is just a light coloured aquarium gravel, but I've used it in a display tank at work, or a sales tank at work anyway, and it looked really nice. You don't see a lot of this being used in marine tanks. It's typically just your coral sand and your live rock, and I think it's a bit of a shame. So we're going to go ahead and put this in there. Obviously this is just pebbles, little gravelly bits, so it's kind of chemically inert, and we're just going to sprinkle it over here, build up a bit of a layer, and it will give us more of that seaside beachy kind of feel. So the way I'm adding it in there, I'm just spreading it as equally as I can, like this. I mean, obviously over the period of time the coral sand is going to mix with this as this flow, but luckily, as far as I'm aware, larger pebbles tend to rise to the surface and the finer stuff tends to go to the bottom, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Hopefully this layer of larger grain gravel will typically tend to stay near the surface and look quite nice. So that's all the gravel in. Does this look like a marine tank to you? No. Does it look like a beach? Kind of. I'm going to add the next stage, which are these rocks. So this is what you typically find on a pebbly kind of beach. These round, sea-washed granite and miscellaneous stone kind of large pebbles. So that's what I'm going to put in. Again, I'm going to gradient them down the beach, so there's going to be less on this end of the tank. I'm a bit out of breath. That was quite hard work putting these pebbles in and moving all the sand around. Excuse me. And that's kind of what we're going to do now. So we're going to put these rocks in and see how we go from there. So there we go, pile of rocks. Looks reasonable, I think. There's only so much artistry you can do with some pebbles, but it looks okay. So the next thing we're going to do is add some shells. Now, a beach has shells on it, so I thought shells is what we need. And you wouldn't believe the difficulty I've had getting shells. That was my first attempt. Well, obviously I got shells, but 100 grams of shells, $3.99, got ripped off, I think. I've also been collecting shells at work. That's that big... when you get interrupted by your duck filming a video. That's the big clam that was in the marine lagoon aquarium. Unfortunately it died, but I kept the shell. Look how big it is. Because I thought it looked cool in here, and at least then it's sort of still being honoured in a way. Second try, collecting shells. Took forever. So I ordered 1 kilo of shells from eBay. Third time lucky. And looking at the size of the tank, maybe I should have ordered 2 kilos. But we'll see what happens. And this is just going to be scattered amongst everything, kind of how you'd see a beach. So I would say that was a successful snail shell scattering experience. $8.99 for 1 kilo of shells is actually quite good value. Quiet, duck. I'm filming a video. You can see out the window, there's my female mallard being very obtrusive into this video, but never mind, we'll carry on, we'll persist. Cute, really. Next thing we need to do is fill this tank up with water. Now I've got several drums of salt water ready to go. I haven't put a filter on it yet, I'll do that in a second. So I'm not going to put a heater in there yet. I'm going to put a heater in there when I actually start getting around to putting the livestock in, but I'm going to be filling it with water now. As if it wasn't enough that there's ducks running everywhere while I'm doing this. Also have a pheasant as well. He's a regular visitor to our muck heap, which is where my lovely shed is situated. Ducks, pheasant. You can see he's quite friendly actually, because he hasn't run away. Here we are then, all filled up. It's very cold, that water, because it's been stored outside in big barrels, so that's why. There's a little bit of condensation on the glass, and it's also gone a little bit cloudy, but not too bad. Not as bad as you would have got if you hadn't have rinsed the sand. So let's talk a little bit about the equipment I'm going to be using on this tank, or in fact am using on this tank. So filtration wise, I'm using a 207 that I have just kicking around. Now, the aim of the filter in this instance isn't actually to do biological filtration. This unit here is mechanical filtration, and that is the only thing I expect it to be doing, is mechanically filtering the water of debris. The biological filtration is going to be happening in the tank itself. This big pile of rocks here is going to be the biological filter, and obviously as well it's going to be absolutely jam-packed full of macroalgae at some point, so the biological activity will be happening in the system, and that's how I like things to happen. It's a more natural way of doing it when you just rely on the stuff in the tank. Lighting wise, like my other systems, I'm using a Tri-Spec. This is an Interpet Tri-Spec 2. This is the largest unit you can get. This is a 5-foot LED strip. So I've got the Tri-Spec just mounted there on 2 bits of wood. Very, very basic, but that's how I do stuff. And these are very, very good at growing macroalgae. They've got the full spectrum there. You've also got red and blues. So I expect this to be a very, very stunning aquarium when I get the macroalgae in. Tank has cleared a little bit. There's still a lot of condensation on there. So let me know what you think of this build. It's far from finished. We've still got a lot of stuff to do to it. We're going to be planting it up with many different species of marine macroalgae, and then obviously we've got things to put in there such as the cleanup crew and fish and bits and pieces like that. So a long journey ahead of us. If you've got anything that you want to comment on, or if you have any questions regarding the setup, leave a comment below and I will answer it. So thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please remember to leave a like and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Once again, thanks for watching and happy fish keeping!